Hey Eric, how's it going?
It's excellent. Just another beautiful day in paradise.
I know. We've been talking a lot about this idea of personal values lately. Like we did it in Radical Redesign. We made everyone come up with their own code, basically, of personal values, right? Why is that important? Like why are we making people do this?
I think most people, whether they can name it consciously or not, are deeply and often negatively impacted by not having a set code is actually the right word, a code of values in their awareness, in their life, actually influencing the way that they live. And certainly we feel that collectively with the widespread shenanigans that everyone watches happen in upper tiers of society and culture. So on both levels, we feel just this massive misalignment, this massive confusion, and this massive kind of lack of coherence, lack of cohesion. Feels like the story doesn't make sense anymore. And a huge part of that, I think, is the lack of an individual and the lack of a collective kind of moral and value code that people operate by. So it's fundamental.
Yeah, what happens when we don't have values?
One of the things that happens, and again, you see this individually, you see this collectively. One of the biggest things that happens is your like event horizon for acting, the timeline that you base your actions on shrinks dramatically. So you start becoming way more like short term opportunistic than thinking and planning and acting for something that endures over long periods of time. Because acting
Mm,
in alignment with your
yeah.
values is a super long game. It's a really long game. It actually doesn't end, theoretically. The end point of acting in alignment with your values is your time of death. You can act in alignment with your values up until you can no longer act, period. But in the absence of that, in the absence of knowing what is good for you, because good becomes acting in alignment with your values, in the absence of that, you just, you know, fly by the seat of your pants. Whatever feels good, looks good, gives you some kind of appeal to other people in the moment just becomes the North Star. It becomes the compass. And you can do a whole lot of damage to yourself, to the foundations of society pretty quickly when that is your orienting tool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how the values we seem to kind of default to, well, values or lack of values we kind of default to when we're not in this mindset are basically comfort, convenience, and ease. Like that's it. That's what we do when we're living for right now, right? And we're not making our decisions or our behavior around deeper values of things that, like you said, are more long lasting or that matter in the long term, right? I don't know, our smaller human nature, our desire for survival and ease and comfort kick in and we just default to that. And that's what we see now, right? That's what we default to. I don't want to cook, so I'm going to order food, right? It's too hard to push myself to do anything big or great or wonderful. I'm just going to sit here and be comfortable in my house. Like all we do is just default to these, which I don't know, you could argue those are values too, right? They're just not, I don't know, they're not very lofty values. They're well, based on short term, based on keeping ourselves safe. I think yeah, safety is another one. Like safety, comfort, convenience and ease.
And there's something, I mean, I completely agree. On one hand, I think it's most people adopt those because that is the dominant system they were born into. They were born into a generation of convenience as desirable endpoint. Like, so long as it is convenient, it is good to pursue.
Right? Right.
And that is actually, over a long enough time period, that's really toxic. It really corrodes a lot of things because the things that are convenient or expedient are not necessarily, and certainly often aren't, the things that are most deeply meaningful, best oriented towards human flourishing, or planetary flourishing for that matter.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and actually, I think a lot of the time too, maybe in fairness, if they weren't just adopted from the culture, I think a lot of the time values like that come from a place of deep wounding instead of a place of deep, like passion or aliveness or pursuit of something meaningful. Like
Yeah.
if you're very wounded, of course your highest, like literally if you lobbed your arm off, very quickly something like security is going to jump to the top of your own values pyramid there because you're actively hurt, you're in need of
Right.
something. And so it makes sense that, yeah, convenience, comfort, what would you call it? Steadiness, like consistency, all of these things become values. But, if you step back and you look at like, is this what we want humanity to pursue as its like reason for existing? I don't know. I think there would be a couple
Yeah.
other values that would supersede that. Um, yeah, so it's both kind of sad because we just imported them from the way things are, but also, yeah, it seems like they come from a place of sadness or incompleteness or wounding instead of the
Yeah. Or
true, the
fear.
good, the
Right.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a place of fear. I think wounding creates fear, right? And then you're acting out of fear instead of out of any real true desire for anything out of life, basically. Yeah, I mean, I think about, you remember when I was shopping for sneakers, new sneakers. This is like my favorite example of this now. You remember this? And
Hmm.
I'm looking and I know that I don't want super cushy padded sneakers because that's actually not good for your feet. Like cushy padded sneakers do not build strong feet. They make your feet comfortable and they make it easier to run and walk and do things, but they don't strengthen your feet over the long term, right? They actually weaken them. And I would go, like, we went to, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 stores and, rows and rows of sneakers, not a single one without, at least an inch or so of cushion padding. I was like, I can't buy these. This is against my values. This is also literally what happens when we have a culture that values comfort and convenience above all else. Like to that, I don't know. To me, that's extreme already, right? It's like, well, no, I'm afraid of hurting my feet. Okay, so I'm going to put a bunch of cushion and padding in them to make sure they're comfortable all the time. Okay, great. Then you're never going to have strong feet. And then your feet are never going to grow. They're never going to become more resilient. And that's like, yeah, these are the antithesis to any sort of growth, greatness, strength. Just, yeah, being able to fully be human in any way. Like it just diminishes us to this little, it reduces our experience to, like you said, just to living in the moment, to, I don't know, I have this image in my head of like just cushioning ourselves in, right? Padding everything we have in with comfort. And it's almost like what's the name of that movie? The Boy in the Bubble. You know what I'm talking about? The Bubble Boy. Like we're basically
Yeah.
living that. We're living in a bubble. We bubble ourselves in with all of these things, right? That we cushion ourselves around. And so, yeah, recreating both on a personal cultural level, our own code of values of what really matters to me, hopefully more than comfort and convenience. It's the only way to combat it, to kind of pull ourselves out, to pop out of the bubble and actually do something with our lives.
Yeah, there are a few really scary things that like stem from this. One is, yeah, this place of fear and this place of wounding. On an individual level, what you get is you want things to pause for a second, like, hold up, just like stop. I'm scared, I'm hurt, I need things to like chill for a second so I can get my shit together and go back out into the world. But which is, it's that's all well and good as long as it's a temporary period of stagnation, of actually stopping things. But when you get that ethos, the ethos of stop, do not progress, like do not pass go, at a cultural level, like the only thing you get is a cult of entropy. You get literally the crab in the bucket example where, You put crabs in a bucket and one climbs up, the rest will pull it back down. Having that North Star of, maybe the more accurate way to say it is stagnation. Like, pause for a minute is a very bad orienting frame for a collective. The other point you touched on there that I think is really correct is truly pursuing values will often take you to places that are uncomfortable, that are inconvenient, that are very challenging. And so they're not exactly mutually exclusive, but it's very hard for them to coexist for any long period of time. But so what you get, if you have people not willing to kind of develop the internal fortitude to actually pursue values, what you get is a group of, like, the people who rise to the top in that situation where values have gone out the window is the people who are the best or the most comfortable at having and acting without a value system, right? The people who are willing to exploit, the people who are willing to punish, people who are willing to manipulate, right, are the ones, the people most self-obsessed are the ones who rapidly climb that ladder, because now the arena is just, that's what it caters for. And you see this in everything. You see this in media, you see it in politics, you see it in war. It's all just, now the people at the top are the ones who often demonstrate the highest degrees of narcissism, Machiavellianism, the dark triad traits. And that is not something, I mean, people don't feel good about it individually, interacting with stuff like that. And it's certainly not a long-term strategy for a society. And so it really comes back to like, what are you going to do about that? Can you actually make the hard decision? Are you willing to define your own values? Are you willing to make really tough decisions to act in alignment with them?
Yeah, I like that. Like, if people get really comfortable with acting and living without a code of values. Like, it's comfortable to not value values, basically, to get really circular about it, is what you're saying. Like, it's more comfortable to not even value anything. It's more comfortable just to not care, to do whatever's in your best interest in the moment. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. What was I going to say about that? I think that's part of what makes it so difficult to think this is important, because it is easy. It's like, well, what do I need values or virtues for, right? I can just do whatever I want every day. Like, maybe it also feels, I mean, besides more comfortable, more convenient and easier, it gives you like a false sense of freedom to not stick yourself to any values, not be like, I value, for example, right? I value loyalty. I'm living my life by that. Or I value courage, right? I live my life by that. I value integrity, which is one of our big ones, right? I live my life by that. It's harder to do that and say that than just be like, yeah, I don't know, because you have to stick to it once you say it, once you've spoken it into reality.
Yeah, I mean, it sets you up for failure, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to the fear thing, right? Once you've defined something to aim at, it's very clear when you miss the target. And most people, this is the safety wounding thing again, right? Most people have a deep fear of failure, particularly if it's, I mean, values are a very human level thing, right? And it would feel, in a way, it's almost a fear of like messing up the human thing, right? God damn, I don't even want to define values because I might prove that I can't do it. And then, of course, you just end up, it's largely an illusion. The feeling of your life is better without values is largely an illusion, because whatever metric you look at people's lives individually, you look at collective trends, right? People's bodies, or their mind-body complex, is clearly telling them that they're not better this way, right? People are wildly depressed, hyper-medicated, killing themselves at greater rates than at any point in history. It's like there's no positive data point that says this is actually working for people. It actually contributes in a real way to perpetuating fear. Because one of the frames I really like for this is values are a kind of compass for the future. I mean, the future is always unknowable, right? Like you have no idea what's about to come. It's very difficult to plan for. But one of the things that you always have with you as a kind of tool in your toolkit is what actions, what future paths presented to me align with my values. And actually, so long as you
Yeah.
pursue that, you can actually go to really good places.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Like I've been
yeah.
thinking about this since we did Radical Redesign just what, a few weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago? Like it makes decision making easier. I mean, convenience does too, because it's like, well, I want whatever's easiest. Great, done. But again, as we've established, that leads to stagnancy, non growth, yucky things. But when you do have these values that you know you care about, that can also make it easier to make decisions because all you have to do is like refer back to those, right? And say, okay, if I know that I value, again, I don't know, if I know that I value courage, then I know exactly what I'm going to do in this situation. Like, I'm going to man up and do whatever I need to do because courage matters to me. That doesn't make it easier to do, but it makes the decision making easier. Like, it builds self trust, right? Like, I can trust myself to make the right decisions and behave this way because I know what's guiding me. I know what's guiding me. I know what I care about doing. Obviously the super fun work is aligning it. like you said, you're gonna if you do this, which again we just did, and we'll talk about our experience in a minute, but once you do this, like you said, it sets you up for failure. Not only does it set you up for failure, which isn't a bad thing, it makes your life really, really real really, really quickly because chances are you are not living your values. Like there's no way. And so it's like, oh no, I'm just not going to establish them and I don't have to think about it. Once you do it, like there's no question, right? Nobody is perfectly in integrity. Nobody is perfectly courageous. No one is perfectly loyal. Far from it, right? And then like shit's going to get real really fast when you look at that and you're like, oh, this is what I value. How is this actually showing up in my life right now? And yeah, that's not a nice feeling, but also really worth it, right? It's like trading, again, popping the bubble, taking off the cushion, getting out of the comfort zone, being like, okay, super clear now. Great. Well, if I've established that I value, for example, courage, and I'm definitely not living it right now, does that mean I'm a failure? No, it means now I know exactly where I need to go and what I need to do. Like, I need to grow some fucking balls. I need to make these changes at work, whatever it is. Like it makes it super clear immediately what you're not doing. And great. Now you know what you have to do. Go act on it little by little. Like now, like not only do you have a compass, you have a path. Like, okay, lived life over here, value over here. Great. How do I get from point A to point B?
Yeah, and another part of this is when you do it over time, living according to your values is actually probably one of the greatest foundations for like fundamental self-respect that you can get. Because like look, same thing about the unknowable future, like you can never as much as you would like to, you can never actually control the outcome of anything you do. You can try your absolute best. You can pull out every stop and every move that you can make, and it still might not work, right? It might work, which would be wonderful, and it might not, which is completely out of your control. The thing that makes the difference at that end point of whatever it is, right? You're trying to build a project, you're trying to grow a relationship, whatever it is like at the end of the day, can you look back and actually be satisfied with how you acted, actually appreciate and respect how you played the game, how you actually showed
Right.
up for it? And honestly, just saying like, look, I was in integrity, I was honest, I pursued freedom, truth, goodness, beauty, whatever the actual value stack you have is, you can actually get to that point and be like, you know what? Didn't work out the way I wanted, but I'm actually really proud of how I
Yeah.
showed up. And I
Yeah.
mean, our culture is just devastated by lack of self-worth, lack of self-love, lack of core confidence. And it's actually like, wow, one of the direct paths to cultivating that is define a set of values for yourself and bring your life into alignment with them. Because at the end of the day, you can say, wow, you know what? I really pursued something noble and beautiful, and
Yeah.
it took me on a really beautiful adventure. Um, yeah, it
Right. It's a
creates
simple
a
way of being like, okay, I did my best, right? I did my best. I did my best
yeah.
according to what I value as my best. I can't, so I can't help but think about like very recently, including when, you know, I mean, this happens to us, right? Like we launch a program, we put something out in the world, we do it, and we hope for a good outcome, right? We hope for lots of people to love it. We hope for a lot of people to sign up. We hope to make some damn money, obviously, because what we do is valuable. And when it doesn't, it's still like, it still kind of crushes you a little bit. And I think this is the antidote in the making, right? Because it takes a lot of time and practice to make it of like, okay, great. This did not go as I wanted. I did everything like what am I trying to say? The pitfall of this is when we think, okay, if I did everything right and I did everything the way I think is my best and I care about it, it should turn out the way I want it to. And if it doesn't, then it's still not good enough, right? And that's, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about this recently too, even with, you know, recent program that we did. And it's like, shit, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. It's like, okay, great. Can we fall back on this that you're describing, right? Can I fall back on this and say like, ding, like that really sucks. It wasn't as successful as I wanted. Can I release, like, can I stop being attached to that outcome and still fall back on like, look, I did a really, really good job. I did my best. I put all the value into it I could, and I'm happy with that. Yeah. Like, it is not easy to do. There's also something else I've been kind of playing with lately is it's also an opportunity to look at other hidden like values, subconscious values. Like, why is that so hard? Oh, a part of me really values success. Got it. Like, that is a combating value, right? I value doing a good job. I value service, helping people, whatever. Then why am I not happy with the way this turned out? It's because I value success, probably, which makes perfect sense because that is a big cultural value, right? So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but something about, you know, we have what I like about this code of values thing is, right, you establish your ideal values. They're not perfect in your life. That's fine. But you know that that's what you care about. That's what calls your soul, whatever. Great. You see how you live, and then you can keep identifying like that gap when things happen where you're like, okay, well, I live my like, because different things can happen, right? A, I'm not living my values. It's not making me happy. Okay, I want to align myself. Or B, I am living my values and I'm not getting the outcome that I want. Why am I not happy with this? Oh, there's probably a subconscious value in there that I'm paying more attention to. Like, they're both opportunities to identify the gaps and then like reorient towards, okay, well, how can I feel satisfaction and feel happiness and actually living these things? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's something really confronting here. I totally agree with your point that even pursuing this can highlight like unconscious values and like conflict between some of them. Because yeah, you might value safety. It might turn out that you value safety more than you value truth, right? And that's why you lie to people, right? That is super challenging. The other thing is like, man, the other thing is it highlights that situation of like being disappointed of the outcome despite following your values still shows you that you are that you do not have values as the end point. They are still a tool that you're using for something else, right? They are, and that actually becomes extremely dangerous because that just opens up virtue signaling. That is the entire inversion of values, essentially, as, you know, look at how high and mighty I am, but really I'm showcasing, I'm trying to like peacock feather some kind of value so that I'll get validation, so that I'll get power, so that I'll get some reward at the end of it. Two other comments on this related. I think the two kind of cultures or ways of being that have done this really well are the Stoics and the Yogis. They both, in their own ways, are very relentless, very merciless at saying, no, the end goal is the value itself. The outcome is almost irrelevant. The outcome is living in alignment with your values. And actually, in a way, you set yourself up for what you could consider guaranteed success, right? Success is then measured by living in alignment with your values. It's not the outcome that happens from taking those actions. The alpha and the omega, the starting point and the ending point is act in accordance with values.
Yeah.
The yogis do this too with nishkama karma, like attaching to the inputs, not the outputs. And yeah, I mean, that's just a skill in a way that you have to develop, like really relentlessly bring yourself back. No, the point is the value. The point is not the outcome. Super hard to do that though. There's another interesting point here. Throughout a lot of history, some of the groups of people that adhered to codes of value most strictly were warrior groups and warrior cultures, right? You can think of like the chivalry, the concept of chivalry in the knights. You have the Bushido of the samurai. And like, sure, part of that was because they engaged in war and it was to serve as like bumpers to keep the warrior class like in check. But actually, one of the points on this that I don't think gets surfaced enough is like, if you want to undertake the task of living in alignment with your values, you actually have to bring the warrior spirit to it, because it is highly difficult, it is highly confronting, it is deeply challenging, and it requires a great amount of your own willpower and persistence to actually do that. Because like, I don't know, I'll ground this in a super basic example where it's like, if you value freedom, let's say that, if you value freedom and you notice that the country you live in is becoming increasingly authoritarian, what are you going to do about that, right? The actual next steps in that process are super difficult. You either have to be a dissenting voice against tyranny, which is super difficult to do, particularly if the rest of the culture isn't, or you have to leave, which is also its own intense life task of, completely leaving the country that you're in and moving somewhere that aligns with the value of freedom more. Like, both of those things require a kind of warrior spirit behind them. So it's like, yeah, the warrior cultures lived with values a lot, but it actually takes a kind of warrior willingness to even start this process. And that's why, to circle back, that's why so many people don't do it, because it's hard, but it's important at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanna ask you something, because we quickly discovered this in Radical Redesign by design. I mean, we tasked people with doing it, but I think both you and I had really kind of fun, challenging moments with it, which is at some point you have to kind of choose your values. You have to rank them. There are situations in life where some values might conflict with one another, and you actually have to make the choice of which is greater, which is more important to you. Can you talk at all about your experience of like having to rank your own values and what came up there?
Oh my gosh, it was, that was like that was one of the best, like I'm still thinking about it like every day, because that was one of the best like things we stuck into the program, in my opinion, is so we literally, for context, right? So we literally made ourselves included, right? Like write a laundry list of values that we think we value and then pit them against each other one by to really, really, really cut to the core of like, what do you actually value if you have to let everything else go? And that was wild, like absolutely wild. It was way more challenging than I imagined. And I kind of had this realization of like, yeah, I've always had, in my own belief system, value system has changed dramatically over the course of my life, right? But I had this realization of like, yeah, my values have always been kind of hazy. Like, I'll be a good person, do good, don't hurt other people, right? Love, I love love, love's great. And I think this is the first time in my life I actually sat down and literally defined, like word for word, like, no, what are the things that I would value in my life above all else? if it really came down to it. And then, of course, you have the next realization of like, do I actually live that way? That's ideal, Chloe. Like, that's not really me right now. So yeah, mine were fun. Mine were all, let me see. I came up with my core five. We came up with five, everyone in the program, right? And then we ranked them number 1 to 5. And like, these are the things that are like do or die. And mine got down to, I actually changed it after the program. I got down to presence, like just deeply being present in the moment, integrity, love, freedom. Oh my God, what was my fourth one? I'll have to look it up. But anyway, I ended up switching the first two. I was like, no, actually, integrity is number 1. Integrity, followed by presence, followed by love, followed by freedom, followed by whatever the fifth one was. I have them written down. And so I changed it because over the next several days, I kept kind of mentally during the day doing this little practice of like pitting them against each other. And it's like, but would I choose integrity, which, I have my own definition of integrity, or presence? And there's integrity is a weird one because there are a lot of different levels to it. And arguably integrity should be everyone's first value because living in accordance with your values is living in integrity. So it's kind of the trump card, right? Like that's just how it is. But I don't know. I thought of some situations where I realized like, I would not sacrifice my integrity to be present, to be deeply present. I wouldn't. And I haven't. Like I can point very vividly to like moments in my life where I could have and I didn't. Because there's a core integrity in my person that I'm just not willing to sacrifice. Right? It's like, no, I won't do that. No matter how beautiful and engaging and fun and joyful being present is right now. So yeah, I ended up switching mine because I kept doing this little mental practice of like, okay, well, and in my head, at least I'm kind of imaginative. So I'll think of like really weird, like moral dilemma kind of situations. Right. And so, but you do this over and over and that's how you pit them against each other. So you go, for example, right? Like, okay, I value health. I value strength. Okay, great. Would I value physical health over, I don't know, would I value physical health over integrity? It's like, so would I sacrifice my integrity in order to gain physical health? Like, nah, I wouldn't actually. I probably wouldn't. I would rather be a little less healthy and be in integrity with myself, whatever that means, right? Or, I love love. Like, love is great. Love is the best. I love being in relationships. I love seeing other people in love. Like, I love all aspects of love. But it ended up being number 3 for me because, like, okay, would I sacrifice my integrity for love? No, I would not sacrifice the core of my integrity for love, right? At the end of the day, I would choose being true to myself. And if I have to lose love for that, fine, right? And this is the kind of thing people do when they have very clear personal values, for example, that don't align with their families. And families, kick them out or disapprove or whatever. And it's like that right there, that is choosing your values, right? That is choosing your integrity or your freedom or whatever it is you're choosing over love. Great. Not a bad thing, right? But that's the pitting against each other. That's really, really important. So yeah, I was definitely surprised by mine. It was a really cool process. And, I think that the beauty of it, of course, right, is get your code of values as solid as you can, but also like everything changes. And if at a different point in your life that changes, that's okay too, right? Just be honest with yourself about it, right? Will I always value these things exactly the way they are? I don't know. Maybe in 10 years I'll feel differently, but at least I'm clear on it, right? It's a compass. And at least I know how I'm acting and how I want to act. So anyway, yeah, that's a little bit of mine. I have to look up my 5th one right now because I can't remember what it is. I just wrote about them yesterday and it's like escaping my brain. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, one of the things that stood out for me in the ranking process was acknowledging trade-offs. Yeah, to ground it in an example, like if you rank family as a value higher than you rank like wealth or success, that has very real implications for the way the rest of your life is going to look, right? I had a couple things. I had stuff like freedom, wisdom, integrity actually come like far higher on the list than something like relationship or love or connection. And when I saw that, I had a huge like inner battle with that. The first was like the should story of like, oh, am I an asshole for having for having like freedom ranked higher than relationship? Like, and then, that was like an external like, oh God, what are other people gonna think? Flipped it back on myself and I was like, I don't know, that feels appropriate, at least in where I'm currently at in my current frames. But then it rippled out because, it was funny actually, a few days earlier in the radical redesign, we were looking at like life level regrets as a really interesting way to like reframe priorities. And one of the regrets that I landed on was not feeling like I showed up for friends and family in relationship enough. And it actually, in a way, that value ranking process like actually really helped me. It helped me see more clearly where it's like there are trade-offs to this, bro.
Right.
Like
right.
You can't want both of these to be true at the same time. You have limited time, energy, attention. And yeah, it really helped in two ways. One, it made it much more apparent to me why that was a consistent regret and why it kept coming up, because it was not as high on the value stack. And it was both a permission and a confrontation of like, okay, you have to, these are difficult decisions, dude. Like, get it together. Which one is more important to you? Knowing what you are, prioritizing a value is saying yes to something, sure. It's also saying no to like at least everything lower than that, and certainly no to everything not even on the list, right?
Right.
And that's in many real ways. I think that's actually why a lot of people don't pursue values or live in alignment with values, because it is kind of disgusting how much of your life would be on the chopping block if you actually started doing this, right? Like when your company, if you value honesty or honor or integrity, and your company is asking you to write like white lies and communicate that publicly, what are you going to do? Most people just suck it up, drop the value, and hold the company. But if you were living in alignment with your values, you'd have to at least put up a fight and be like, this is not truthful. I'm not willing to write this. And then some very interesting things will happen. You'll either have a couple interesting conversations with your boss. Maybe you'll actually win, right? Maybe you'll win that, and the company gets a little better and the world gets a little better because of that. But same thing, if a relationship is asking you to do things that don't feel in integrity, that aren't in pursuit of your joy, all right, then it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about that? So yeah, I just found the trade-offs like the most revealing thing, and the process of accepting those trade-offs as realities. It's super easy to sit there and be like, I just want it all. It's all possible. Bro, it's not all possible. You have to choose at some point.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and again, that's why we come up with a short list, right? Because you can choose more than one thing, right? Like, yes, we have a limited time, energy, and attention. We also have a lot of time, energy, and attention. But this makes it clear. It's like, I don't know, when I hear you talking about it too, it can be, the way I'm relating to it right now is it can be a relief to identify these and be like, great, I can stop like internally beating myself up for not doing this thing. If I've just realized it's like priority number 4, great, let it go. Like, it's a relief. Or it's okay, let me reevaluate, right? Like with the family thing and friends thing, it's like, great, if that's only number 3 or 4 on your short list of 5 values, let yourself off the hook a little bit, right? Like, great, I know what I'm about. I know that I value, my work or my freedom or my whatever more than that. So I'm going to stop internally beating myself up for not calling my family every day or every week, right? I'm going to call them every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks because that's what makes more sense for me. Awesome. What a relief. Like, what a relief to not have to beat yourself up about doing things that aren't your most important, most valued behaviors and activities, right? That's how it can feel. Yeah. I think there's all, I also recognize there's a, well, yeah, just it depends what state of life you're in, right? Like we don't have kids. I think if I had kids or a family, like love and family would obviously like take priority. Like my values would switch completely, and people with families do. Like we could see it in people's short lists when they were sharing them in Radical Redesign. It's like, yeah, pretty much anyone out of family's fucking first. That's awesome. Arguably, according to my more, like that's how it probably should be. But again, that's a trade-off, right? Like if you have humans who are depending on you for life, you don't maybe get to prioritize all the other things you want to. If you want to be your very best family member, great, but that's a trade-off that you can willingly and consciously make. And then once it's made, what a relief. Like, great. You don't have to constantly be battling in your mind about, am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Am I doing this? Like, no, it's set. It's set. We're good. So I like that a lot. Like that's what my list gives to me. It's this sense of relief, which is okay. I know what I'm doing. I know what I stand for. And when I'm in a dilemma or when I'm having like some inner criticism going on, I can just refer back to that. Like, okay, why are we upset right now? What are we upset about? Great. Where does this fall in line? Yeah. How do you relate to your code of values right now?
Both as the path and the destination, hopefully. I mean, doing it in Radical Redesign wasn't my first time at bat trying to figure this stuff out. So some of it was like a painful reminder of like, oh yeah, I keep saying this is important to me and my life isn't. There's still more to be done there. And some of it was clarifying. And yeah, I mean, you called it out. Like there's still moments, painful teaching moments might be the way to say it, where it's like, oh, I can still see the ways where my like center of satisfaction, my center of okayness is still like deeply rooted in outcomes and not in inputs.
Yeah.
Deeply rooted in.
So what is your short list? What is your top 5 that you came up with?
Yeah, I had integrity, wisdom, freedom, health, and love. Yeah, some of them came as like amalgamations, like conglomerates. Like I had truth like really high up there, but it kind of got absorbed by integrity and wisdom when I had to narrow it down to 5. Yeah, beauty was another really. It was interesting. Beauty was really high up there. Like there was some like aesthetic value in me that was really shocking to kind of discover. Something like if it's not at least remotely beautiful, it's not worth doing. It was really interesting to see that. Yeah.
So those are, it's funny when, again, like, I don't know, we kind of think we have, like I said earlier, a general sense or idea of things we value. And then you sit down and do it. It can be surprising, like to recognize how important things are or how unimportant other things are that you thought were important. So touching just a little more on like the whole alignment thing, right? I've been playing with this. We've been talking about it throughout this whole conversation, but I've been playing with this idea of like our ideal values, which is our code of values, versus our lived values, like the things we're actually living by, which, as we said, often end up being ease, comfort, convenience, safety, security. And so the fun part is like bridging that gap, right? Finding where we're missing out on it. So in your top 5, what are some spots of like, I guess both, where are some that you feel good, that you're like, hell yeah, like I'm living these, and other areas where like, I see where this isn't quite coming into reality yet?
Oh, this is gonna be kind of weird because I am, for better and for worse, it's not for better and for worse, I am extremely self-critical as a person, as an orientation. I'm like hyper critical of myself. So my honest answer is like, I don't know. I just see a huge gap between where I am and what I consider like really embodying the values of integrity, wisdom, freedom, health, and love. Like Yeah. And funny enough, I say it gets weird because how self-critical I am and can be is actually out of integrity, which is like a really important value for me because it's like I know I'm just not, I know I've come really far. I know like there's a lot of good in me, and like it's, I disproportionately don't recognize that enough. And so that's why I say it's weird because it's like, look, I'm a lot further than I often admit, but you know, it's an endless horizon, right? The further you go down the path, the further the path keeps going in front of you. And so, yeah, when I look at particularly integrity, like the most basic definition of integrity I have is what you think, the same as what you say, the same as what you do. Yeah, when I think of the beliefs I hold, the things I'm willing, the feedback I'm willing to give people, the things I think about the direction of culture and the way I act in association with that, there's definitely a lot of room. So yeah, but at the end of the day, like I feel excited about them primarily. It's like on the
Mm,
best of days, it's like, holy
nice.
crap, look at how much further we can go. Look at how much better there is to be done. Um, I have a line that I really like of like, what other game would you rather be playing, right? Than trying to maximize and embody, wisdom, freedom, health, love, integrity. Like those are the things that genuinely excite me now. So yeah, there's still a lot of room to go, but yeah, I'm excited to keep going in that way.
Well, that's why I kind of both want to ask both, like, okay, so what are some examples of ways that you feel good about living your values? Like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, that, and the other. And then what are some of the gaps? So again, what are some ways you feel good about living your values? Like, oh yeah, that's really come into alignment. Or like, oh yeah, that's super present.
Yeah, I've made it, I feel good about the fact that I have made extremely major and extremely difficult decisions on how I live because of the things that I value. I
For
mean, for
example,
like big ones, I moved countries based on the things that I valued. I stopped using, haven't completely stopped. There's still room to go, but I mean, I've largely taken my life off of using dollars, which is super difficult to do in today's day and age. Like really
yeah.
exiting the traditional finance system because of my values around ethics, integrity, freedom, truth. I don't feel like it aligns with that at all. That was a difficult process. I actually went from being a kind of vegan vegetarian for a decade to now subsisting on a largely animal based diet, which I mean that's tough. That's tough at an identity level. That's tough taking shit from other people and having to like consistently explain the process that went into that, but it really aligned with truth, what I consider good sound arguments, wisdom, how to live well. I mean, these are big parts. I've changed the work that I've done, right? The work I do now is in no way similar to what I wanted to do when I was growing up. And that itself was a process of being honest with myself, bringing my work into integrity, doing stuff that I could actually ethically stand behind, like major stuff. And there are equally, right? There are equally a lot of things still in my life that could be done to bring it way deeper down. Like one of the ways is actually the way I talk and the way I write and the way I engage with people. Actually, it would be more an integrity for me to be both harsher with people because I know my actual opinions are way harsher than I often communicate, and equally to be way more compassionate with people and way more gentle. I often don't give people too much of a benefit of the doubt, and I just say buckle up and get it done, which
Hmm.
can minimize people and the process that you have to go through to make major changes. So I mean that's one. There are a bunch of quote unquote smaller things, right? I say I want to get off of the financial system. There's still a lot of moves I have to make for that. There's stuff around privacy and freedom and respect that my tech stack still doesn't totally align with. It's that stuff can sound small, but again, it's like the values are fairly clear cut, bro. It's like, I know I don't value the data harvesting of Google, and yet there's still a whole fucking lot in my life tied into Google, right?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot that can still be done, and yeah, it's really just, it's like going to the gym, right? It's like a little bit every day. Can you keep going down the path, and eventually you actually get to places that surprise you. So yeah, there's a lot I'm grateful for. A lot of hard work it took, but still a lot to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, like you said, right? I mean, you've done an insane amount of like radical changing to your life based on your values, but which again is amazing, and it deserves, like, those things deserve credit. They deserve to not be forgotten, right? And we kind of memory, right, kind of just doesn't focus on them because we don't focus on the past. But it's true that, as you said, the farther you go, the farther you realize there is to go, right? Like, can I be even more in integrity? Like, yeah, can I be even more courageous? Can I be even more free? Whatever, by your definition that means for you. And I mean, it's like with anything, like the more you learn about something, the more you realize you don't know. And it's like, oh, I could go even farther with this. I can go even farther with this. It's like, dang. And that's cool. I think that's also why presence is one of my top values, because it's like, yeah, and things are really great right now too. Like, look how far we've come. It's pretty awesome. Hang out here. Don't get too caught up in all the work there is to do to miss the actual experience of the here and now. Yeah, easier said than done, but again, that's, I think, the attached to the output, not the outcome. Output being what you're doing right now. Cool. Yeah, that's pretty complete for me. Are there any other thoughts you have around personal values before we wrap up? Anything else you want to say or share?
Yeah, one thing that's really present for me is, I mean, for myself growing up, and for a lot of people I've worked with in experiences, containers, all of that stuff, a lot of people I met have a very real, very authentic desire to, be the change that you want to see in the world, to put humanity on a really beautiful course for flourishing. That intention can become this kind of like unbearable weight in people, and actually crushes a lot of people. They're like crushed by the almost need to like do something major in the world. I think people underestimate the power of just being the example, of just actually being the person making the difficult choice and showing other people how to do that, and actually like still feel like defining and adhering to a personal code, a code of values, a code of ethics, and actually just bringing your life into unbelievable alignment with that is an insanely positive move in the world today. So I guess my point is like, look, if you actually want to do something radical, if you really want to be a meaningful agent of change, like be the leader, be the example, be the one who makes the hard decision, who actually is a dissenting voice when your company is asking you to do something slightly unethical, right? Who will actually protest something that is inappropriate, who will actually make a very difficult change for no other reason other than you want to be able to have a deep level of self-respect for yourself, right? Like living your values is actually a very powerful way to enact like real ripples of change in the world. So don't overlook it. Don't discount it as something just like kind of self-helpy work that you're just doing for yourself just so you won't be as depressed. Like it is a major undertaking, and you can inspire a lot of people with it. That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, think about how much you respect someone when they have their own values and therefore have their own boundaries or limits, or like their stake in the ground where it's like, I stand for this, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. And you're just like, oh, right, people do that, okay. Got it. I respect you for that. Yeah. Right, like, because it's become a rather rare thing to see, and it's kind of cool. You're like, that's your value, got it, love it, keep doing it. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'll say this to wrap up, I guess. Totally agree, and I'm really excited we're going to dig into this a lot more. I have some spicy things to do around values in our upcoming dojo session later this month. Yeah, I'm pumped because I want to, not only do the work around defining your values, be like, oh, okay, yeah, I see them, I figured them out, I'm gonna identify gaps, but like taking some bold actions to be like, great, like put this out there, put this in people's faces, like wear this as a badge on your forehead kind of level, because I think that's a huge part of maintaining your values. It's like, I'm not afraid for anyone to know them. I'm not embarrassed by them. I wear this on my sleeve for everyone to see, and I'm gonna make decisions based on this. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited to get into this with everyone who comes, because we're gonna, like you said, take it to the next level of like, look, you can do this radically, and it doesn't have to hurt a lot, but you have to be adamant about it. Anyway, shout out and plug for our upcoming dojo session in a couple weeks, because this is the work we're going to be doing together. And like you said, it's not just, we don't view this as just, feel good, feel better about your life. We view this as like, this is the core fundamental of becoming who you are. And the fact, what it is to be human and actually live your life, right?
Completely.
Living a life guided by comfort and ease is not really living. So yeah, it's gonna get a little spicy. I'm really excited.
It's gonna be beautiful.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome. All right, this is fun. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
As usual, unmute and say I love you. See you very soon.
Yeah, love you guys.
Goodbye. I love you. See you very soon.